It wasn't a tune or melody, more like the kind of whistling someone does when trying to get someone's attention. In the dream, I turned toward the sound, and the moment I did, I woke up. The camp was dead silent. I could feel Rocky pressed up against my side in the tent. That wasn't unusual, but what was strange was how rigid he was. I could hear a low growl rumbling from his chest, barely audible but constant. I stayed still, listening. Nothing. Then, there it was again, a faint, high-pitched whistling. Only this time, it wasn't in the dream. It was real. The sound was distant but sharp, and it was coming from the direction Rocky had been focused on earlier. My heart rate spiked. I slowly unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. My flashlight was by the fire pit, which had died down to glowing embers. There wasn't enough light to see anything beyond a few feet. But Rocky was now standing at the flap of the tent, hackles raised, staring out into the black. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He just watched. I whispered, "Hello? Is someone there?" The whistling stopped. The silence that followed was the worst part. You expect the forest to be quiet at night, but this was unnatural. No crickets, no breeze, no movement at all. Then came footsteps, slow, crunching leaves, approaching from behind the trees. I grabbed the bear spray from beside my sleeping bag, ready to use it the moment something got close. I wasn't going to wait. But the steps, they stopped again, just out of view. That's when I saw something. A shape, barely lit by the moon filtering through the trees. A person, standing still, watching. They were way too close to our campsite to be someone just hiking through. And they weren't holding a flashlight. Just standing there, unmoving. I stepped fully out of the tent, bear spray ready. "Back off. I'm armed," I yelled, trying to sound confident. No response. Then they turned. Quietly, slowly, and walked back into the woods. Not ran. Not stumbled. Just calmly walked back into the dark. I didn't wait around. I grabbed my pack, stuffed what I could into it, and slung it over my shoulder. I called Rocky, who was already at my heel, and we took off down the trail. I didn't stop to rest. Not once. I didn't even turn my flashlight on. I didn't want to make myself a target. Rocky stayed silent, keeping pace with me, occasionally looking behind us. After hours of tense hiking, we reached the trailhead and got back to my truck. I locked the doors the second I got in and drove until I was an hour away before stopping at a gas station. I sat there in the parking lot, Rocky resting in the passenger seat, both of us exhausted and wide-eyed. Whatever was out there that night, I don't think it was just a lost hiker or some weirdo. I still think about the whistling. That same high-pitched tune that started in my dream, and then happened in real life. It was almost like I was being warned, or marked. I haven't been back to that campsite since, and I don't think I ever will. It was the end of September last year when I decided to take a solo weekend trip into the woods. I needed a break. Work had been overwhelming, and I hadn't slept properly in weeks. I figured 2 days with no phone, no emails, just me and the forest would reset my brain. I picked a trail I'd never been on before, deep in a state forest about 3 hours from my apartment. It wasn't an official campsite, just one of those long, narrow trails with a few clearings where backpackers could pitch a tent if they knew where to look. I arrived around 4 p.m. on a Friday, parked off the side of the gravel road, and started hiking with everything I needed in my pack. The air was crisp and clean, the kind of sharp autumn air that makes your lungs feel brand new. I passed a small stream, a field of dry grass, and then found the clearing I had marked on my map. It was perfect. Not too open, not too deep into the trees. I pitched my tent, gathered some wood, and got a small fire going just before the sun dipped behind the hilltops. For the first time in a while, I felt relaxed. I made a simple dinner and leaned back on my pack, staring at the fire, listening to the occasional crack of twigs and the wind rustling the dying leaves. But around 9:30 p.m., I started to feel unsettled. It wasn't anything I could see or hear. It was more like a feeling that something had shifted in the air. I was staring into the trees just beyond the firelight when I got the strangest impression that something, or someone, was watching me. I turned around quickly, shining my flashlight through the woods. Nothing. Just empty forest. I told myself it was my brain messing with me. I've always had a wild imagination, and being out alone at night was probably just bringing that out. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. And Rocky, my dog, wasn't with me this time. If he'd been there, I would have trusted his instincts over mine. After another hour of fighting off the creeping paranoia, I climbed into my tent and zipped it shut. I left my flashlight and my knife right next to my sleeping bag, just in case. For a while, I lay there listening to the fire crackle outside, trying to calm myself down. Eventually, I must have dozed off. Then, at some point in the middle of the night, I woke up. There were no sounds. The fire was out. No wind, no bugs, no distant owls. Nothing. I sat up inside the tent and immediately knew something wasn't right. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the whole forest was holding its breath. I stayed perfectly still for a minute, just listening. And then I heard footsteps. Not heavy ones. Slow, deliberate, crunching the leaves just beyond the tent. I didn't move. My hand went straight to the knife. The footsteps circled halfway around the tent, then stopped. My heart was pounding. I was too afraid to speak or even breathe loudly. Then, nothing. The sound just vanished. I waited, frozen, for what felt like an hour before I finally got the courage to unzip the tent just enough to peek out. Nobody was there. I shined my light in every direction. Still nothing. I stayed awake the rest of the night, knife in hand, sitting upright in my tent like an idiot. When the first gray light of dawn touched the trees, I stumbled out and checked the area. No footprints. No broken twigs. No sign that anyone, or anything, had been walking around my tent. By 7 a.m., I had my gear packed up. I had originally planned to stay 2 nights, but I was done. Something about this forest was wrong. But then I saw something strange on the walk back. About 20 minutes into the hike out, just off the path, I spotted a cabin. Now, I'm telling you, I scouted this trail online, and there were no structures anywhere near this part of the forest. But there it was. A single-room wooden cabin. The windows were boarded up from the inside, and the door was slightly ajar. Against my better judgment, I went to check it out. I know, stupid. But I was curious, and part of me wondered if someone had been squatting there. Maybe they were the ones who walked around my tent. The cabin was quiet. I pushed the door open slowly, and immediately smelled something old, like rotting wood and something else I couldn't quite place. It was dark inside, but with my flashlight I could see it was completely empty. No furniture. Just one small pile of ashes in the corner, like someone had made a fire directly on the floor at some point. That's when I saw the writing on the wall. Carved deep into the wood in long, jagged strokes were 3 words. "Don't stay here." I backed out immediately. But the weirdest part? When I turned around to get back to the trail, the path was gone. I swear to you, I had only stepped off the trail by maybe 15 feet. I never turned around, never wandered. But now the trail was nowhere to be found. I walked in circles, retraced my steps, even tried to use the sun to reorient myself. Nothing. It was like the forest had shifted around me. I was completely disoriented. Panic started to creep in. For 2 hours, I wandered, trying to find any sign of the trail. Eventually, I took out my compass and started heading northwest, hoping I'd eventually hit the road or the creek I passed earlier. And somehow I did. Just before noon, I found the trail again. I sprinted back to the parking spot, got into my car, and drove away without looking back. Later that week, I tried searching online for any mention of a cabin near that trail. Nothing. No stories, no maps, no reports. It's like it didn't exist. To this day, I don't know what happened out there. I don't know who or what was walking around my tent. I don't know how that cabin showed up or why the trail disappeared around it. And I really don't want to go back to find out. All I know is this: something about that forest wasn't right. And whoever carved those words into the wall, they were trying to warn me. I never believed in ghosts, or spirits, or anything like that. Not until the night I got lost in Pine Hollow Forest. It started as a quick afternoon hike. I had just moved to a small town in the mountains, and a coworker mentioned a quiet trail near the edge of town. He said it was peaceful and rarely crowded. I figured I'd be in and out in a couple of hours. The trailhead looked normal enough. A wooden sign, some overgrown bushes, and a narrow dirt path winding into the trees. I didn't even bring much with me, just a bottle of water, my phone, and a small flashlight in my jacket pocket, just in case. At first, the trail was beautiful. The air was fresh, and the tall pine trees stood like giants, their trunks stretching forever toward the sky. A cool breeze passed through the needles, making a soft whispering sound. I felt calm, free. But then something strange happened. About an hour into the hike, I heard something that made me stop. It was faint, but clear. A voice. Someone was calling my name. At first, I thought I imagined it. Maybe it was the wind, or my brain playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again. Eli. It was a woman's voice. Soft, distant, like she was standing far away, just out of sight. I turned around quickly, scanning the trees. "Hello," I called out. "Is someone there?" No answer. The forest suddenly felt too quiet. No birds. No rustling. Just that heavy, breathless silence. I told myself someone might be hiking ahead of me, maybe calling a friend with the same name. It was a common name, after all. But still, I felt uneasy. The trees, which had felt welcoming before, now looked twisted and wrong. The trail, which had been clear, seemed thinner, almost like it was fading. I turned back the way I came, but the path behind me was gone. I froze. I had followed one single trail the whole way. I never wandered off. I never turned left or right. But now, the dirt path was gone, completely swallowed by pine needles and brush. That's when I heard the voice again. Eli. This time, it was closer. I started walking faster, pushing through the trees, trying to find anything that looked familiar. My phone had no signal. My map app wouldn't load. The compass didn't move at all, just spun in a slow, lazy circle. I kept walking, heart pounding, calling out now and then, but there was no reply. After maybe 30 minutes, I saw something ahead. A clearing. I ran toward it, hoping for a road or a cabin or even another hiker. But when I got there, I stopped cold. In the middle of the clearing was an old wooden bench. Just a bench. No trail. No sign. Just sitting there like it had always been part of the forest. And carved into the back of the bench, in deep, jagged letters, was my name. Eli. I stared at it, breath frozen in my throat. My hands started shaking. I stepped back, almost tripping over a root. Then, I heard the voice again. "Sit down." This time, it wasn't distant. It was right behind me. I spun around. No one was there. But the trees felt closer now, like they were leaning in, watching. I didn't sit. I ran. I didn't care which direction. I just had to get away. Branches whipped my face. Thorns tore at my arms. The voice followed me, whispering over and over, "Eli, come back." At some point, I tripped and hit the ground hard. My flashlight rolled out of my jacket. I grabbed it and shined it ahead, gasping for breath. That's when I saw her. A woman standing between the trees. She was wearing a white dress. Her face was pale, and her eyes, they were completely black. Not dark, not shadowed, just empty. She tilted her head and smiled. I turned and ran again, not stopping until I saw lights through the trees. Real lights. Headlights. I burst out of the forest onto a dirt road, nearly getting hit by a pickup truck. The driver slammed on the brakes and jumped out, shouting, "Hey, are you okay?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed toward the woods, hands shaking. He helped me into the truck and drove me to town. I didn't tell him everything. I just said I got lost and heard strange sounds. He nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, you're not the first." Apparently, Pine Hollow has a history. People say the forest is haunted, that it calls out to certain people. People who are alone. People who are tired. People who are lost in other ways. Some come out confused and shaken. Some don't come out at all. And some hear their name whispered in the wind. I don't hike anymore. Not alone. And I never go near Pine Hollow. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the wind in the trees outside my window. And if I listen closely, I swear I can hear it. Eli.